Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I am Kashif Moten and welcome to the show. As you all know that Turkey and Pakistan share a very special relationship. It has been unconditional throughout the period of time since Ataturk till date, and it's our Muslim brethren country, but we feel like we are just one country, there are no borders between us. And this is what makes Turkey so special and have a special relationship with the Pakistani people. Today we are going to discuss the impact of the Syrian civil war and the influx of 2 million refugees in Turkey, which has brought great distress to our brotherly nation. Our honorable guest, who is the Consul General of Turkey in Karachi, Mr. Murat Mustafa Onart. Murat, welcome to the show. Marhaba.
Merhaba.
Very pleasure to see you. Thank you very much for your kind time.
Thank you.
So Murat, please enlighten us on the current situation in Turkey after the Syrian influx. Basically, Syrian war has greatly and deeply impacted the Turkish economy and the Turkish people.
It started 4 years and a half ago, and millions of people have been displaced. More than half of the Syrian population is today displaced. 8 million inside Syria and 4 million in other countries. And Turkey is taking the most of them. We are currently hosting 2.2 million refugees, which makes us the country in the world which hosts the largest numbers of refugees, just before Pakistan.
How do you think it has affected the Turkish people, and how do the Turkish people feel about this?
Turkey has always followed an open arms policy towards refugees from all over the world. We are in a region which is the center of most of the conflicts in the world, unfortunately. And even during the Ottoman times, we have lost some territories. And at that time, we started to have the first inflows of refugees. I heard recently that the first refugees in Turkey, which we also call muhajirs, came from Crete. So it was one of the first territories we lost, and the first refugees came from there.
What is the economic burden currently on Turkey? I mean, you're hosting 2.2 million refugees and different camps and other areas. Please enlighten us about the economic aspect of this tragedy on Turkey.
Kashif, you would agree that it will be very difficult to translate this tragedy into cold numbers?
Of course, I totally agree. And Turkey is a warm-hearted country, so I can totally imagine. But just give us a rough idea as to how much has the government spent.
As I said, Turkey has followed an open arms policy. And since the start of the civil war, the refugees were taken into protection centers, temporary protection centers, and all their needs there are fulfilled, like food, medicine, schools, even psychological assistance. We have already built 25 of those centers, and those are accommodating around 260,000 refugees.
My goodness, that's a huge number.
Yes, and all their needs are
covered. Oh, absolutely, that's brilliant.
And the rest is dispersed in the country. Some have their own businesses, some are with their families, etc.
Of course.
According to the government, we have spent $6.7 billion US, which is immense.
It's an immense amount, $6.7 billion. So has it actually affected the economy? I mean, has the trade deficit begun or the lira been devaluated? What sort of economic burden do you see has come on the Turkish government so far?
It's very difficult to isolate because if you take the larger picture, the war, of course, has also an impact. We have lost lots of trade with Syria and other countries in the region. So the impact, if you would calculate it, will be more than, of course, 6.7 billion, but it's very difficult to assess.
What role has the European Union played so far? Because the EU membership, as we have seen, it's been on stake for Turkey for quite a long time. And certainly we have not seen much help from the EU in the past 4.5 years, but recently. So please let us tell us what's going on really in this matter.
Unfortunately, the EU has reacted only as after some of its members started facing a refugee flow. Until then, we didn't receive any support from EU or the international community in general. And till today, the amounts we have received are very little. It doesn't even amount to $500 million.
So you're not getting any medical assistance, any humanitarian assistance from the EU so far?
No,
is it?
no.
No, nothing.
No.
Right. And how come suddenly the Germany and the EU countries have woken up to accommodate the refugees? How does
Because
it happen?
the refugees started to knock at their doors. The issue was far away. They were not interested and also not involved in it. The Syrian crisis is a result of the Arabian Spring. It began with Tunisia. Then many countries in the Arab world were affected: Egypt, Libya, even Morocco. And it started with people asking for more democracy in those countries. So the same happened in Syria. Some people asked for more democracy, more rights in their country. But the regime from the start, the Assad regime, was very harsh, and they began to suppress these legitimate demands.
What do you think is really the cause behind it? Do you think that the Syrian government should sit down and negotiate, or do you think they should, the Assad regime should step down and maybe, promote normal, regular elections and bring because these IDPs are basically spreading all over the world, and especially across Turkey and Europe. So, what do you think about that?
So, democracy, of course, is a solution. As you know, Bashar Assad is a member of a dynasty. His father was ruling Syria before, and his father also had blood in his hands. Today, since the start of this civil war, more than 200,000 people have lost their lives.
My goodness.
Yes, and also it's not just of course the loss of human lives, but today we are faced with a phenomenon like Daesh, or there are invaluable humanitarian cities, antique cities, which are being destroyed. Palmyra is being destroyed.
Yes, I hear Palmyra has been taken over by Daesh.
Yes.
So, what do you think should be done about Daesh? Because, they are honestly becoming a menace for the world. So, why have people like Daesh taken things in their hands? And why do you think, what should be done about them?
Daesh is a terrorist organization. It has nothing to do with our religion, Islam. And Turkey is against any kind of terrorism, whatever the purpose or their reasons are. So my country is taking a very active part in the fight against Daesh. We have opened some of our air bases to the United States. And as I said, we are actively participating in the fight against Daesh. As I said, I also personally think that those people have sick minds and they have nothing to do with Islam, and they should be eradicated.
Recently, there has been an invasion of the Turkish airspace by Russia, and it's been a violation that's been done twice, actually. But before we move on to your answer, we'd like to take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back just after a short break.
If you allow me, first of all, I would like to explain Turkey's position about the involvement of Russia in the Syrian crisis. We have issued a joint declaration on 1st October, together with France, Germany, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom and the United States of America. And all those countries, we have expressed our deep concern about the involvement of Russia in the Syrian crisis, and especially the bombing of civilian and resistance targets instead of the Daesh targets, which they should be destroying.
Essentially, they should be the target, but the resistance has been affected by, as being bombarded by Russia.
Exactly.
Right.
And there are civilian losses. Russian airplanes have twice, as you are very well informed, violated the airspace of Turkey. And as you said, this is a very serious matter.
What steps has Turkey taken to...
the Russian ambassador in both of the cases has been summoned to our Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And he has been informed that further violation of Turkish airspace will be countered in the most serious manner.
Currently, I've heard, in fact, I've been contacted by a couple of Syrians, families, that they have been forced to change their religion as to better inhabitate inside the EU and adapt Christianity over Islam. What's your take on the matter?
As far as I know, there is no such a requirement to seek asylum in EU.
Right. So, because you see, recently Viktor Orban, the Prime Minister of Hungary, issued a statement resenting the people, and there were protests that we do not want to accept Muslims, Syrian Muslims, as refugees. Do you think that's a sensible approach by the Czech Republic or Poland, or for that matter, Hungary? What approach do you think? Is it sensible for them to make such a blunt statement?
Yes.
I'd say. I'm sorry.
I'm very surprised, and I am learning from you that a European leader has made such a statement, because the European values are open, favoring the difference of religion, freedom of religion, freedom of beliefs. And I'm very surprised that the leader of a major European country can make such a statement.
Well, it's an official statement, and that was surprising to me, because apparently what has come to my attention is that Hungary and Slovak and Czech Republic and Poland hold a certain resentment against the Ottoman Empire, being occupied in the 15th and 16th centuries onwards. So do you think that resentment is still there, or... I personally think it shouldn't be there, but do you think it's still there?
We have very good relations with Poland, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, with Hungary also, but as I said, some minor parties are using these cards to gather interest and support.
But tell us, the Muslim Ummah is going through a very difficult phase at this point in time. And as you see, because there's a lot of bad blood amongst people, and which is begetting a lot of interfaith difficulties for people and Muslims to survive across the globe. What do you think, and what steps should be taken to improve this situation?
Islam is by definition a religion of peace and harmony. And in Turkey, everybody is free to exercise any religion they wish to. So people are free to live in harmony and worship the way they want. I believe that people should go beyond the past, and the past is the past, and what has happened, and we should all look to the future. All of us are promoting interfaith culture. There are lots of initiatives regarding that at the highest level.
Yes, of course.
And as I see, all the Muslim world is open to dialogue and harmony.
Very good. So tell me, there was an inauguration of the mosque in Russia recently.
Yes.
And
our president,
your president,
His
Excellency Mr. Erdogan was there. And so how do you think, I mean, this is a great step. A Turkish Muslim president inaugurating a mosque in Moscow, which is great. So what were the sentiments of the people at that time in Turkey?
We were very proud seeing those pictures and the way this ceremony has been conducted. It's one of the biggest mosques in Europe. The Muslim and Islam has been always a part of the Russian Federation. Some of the components of the Russian Federation are Muslim countries.
Yes, of course. Like Turkmenistan and Azerbaijan.
Exactly.
Yes. By default, they're Muslims, yes.
That's the way to take forward to build a mosque in the capital city, while some other countries are even forbidding the building of minarets.
Yes.
It's a huge step and the right thing to do.
So do you think it will help reduce the conflict between, its effect on the Syrian conflict? Would it improve diplomacy and, probably initiate a dialogue between Turkey and Russia to actually, combat this matter together rather than against each other?
Yes, of course. We have always an excellent dialogue with Russia. And we have huge economic relations. As you see, our president and the Russian president have a very good dialogue. So that's the way forward, yes.
Recently, an EU summit was held with President Erdogan. I think it was a mini EU summit that was held on 5th of October with President Erdogan.
Yes.
So what was the outcome of that EU summit?
For me, it was a very important event because finally the EU has starting to have a dialogue with Turkey on this refugee issue. And they have understand that you have to deal with Turkey, to cooperate with Turkey to deal with the refugee issue. And our president went to Brussels and he had talks with, as far as I know, the president of the commission. It was decided, we were handed a draft action plan by the EU. Of course, we have to study it. And it was decided that a joint working group will be formed. And so the process is still to be mature.
You mean the matter is still under process, but
yes, exactly.
It's fine.
It's a good start.
It's good that at least something gave EU a wake-up call, if not anything else. What do you think? How can the EU benefit from the influx of these migrants, and what benefit? It should be a mutual win-win situation. How can it be that way?
Personally, I think that the EU should draft a common immigration policy. And take this refugee crisis as an opportunity rather than a burden. In that way, because as I see today, the fora is left to these extremist parties. They are the only ones talking about this immigration issue, and always, of course, in a negative way. So if the EU wants to defend its values and look to the future, they should draft a common immigration policy.
Aylan Kurdi's death was a real tragic moment for every father, and I believe it's been, it's probably the most painful picture I've seen on social media for the past couple of months in the last couple of months. How do you suppose Turkey is dealing with the human smuggling, since you're a pathway basically between Asia and Europe? So how do you think Turkey is looking after this matter, and what policies have you devised actually to make this work better?
Turkey is, we say, is a bridge between Asia and Europe. And of course, some people are using it for human smuggling. And our authorities are combating it actively. Just for the last year, 55,000 travelers were arrested. So if you consider that in total 500,000 refugees people came to Europe, you can say that, and all of them didn't came through Turkey. A huge number of them were arrested at the source. And 100 people who are genuine human traffickers have been arrested by the Turkish authorities.
So what's the punishment for human smuggling and human smugglers in Turkey?
It depends of the involvement in the echelon of the organization. It's of course imprisonment, but the duration varies. It's very difficult to say that such a huge human tragedy would have a positive outcome for anyone. But I think that everyone took some lessons from it. Like the European Union and other Western countries, now I think they understand that when they interfere in other countries' affairs, they also are bearing the responsibilities for what's happening afterwards. Like the huge inflow from the Mediterranean is due to the fall of the Libyan state, and that was caused by the intervention of Western states. And they have started a dialogue with Turkey on that issue. That's the position we are always defending, that Turkey is part of the big European family, and we are always ready for dialogue and discuss our problems together. So I think that was, if you can say so, the positive outcome of this crisis.
Let's just say, so basically it was just a wake-up call for Turkey. The European Union, that, okay, guys, look, stop meddling around with people, stop playing with other people's lives, and start taking things seriously for once, right?
Yes.
So that gives Turkey a good perspective and a good chance at the EU membership, I suppose, in the long run.
Yes. We are, as I said, a member of the larger European family. And brilliant. I truly believe that one day we will be a member of the EU.
What message would you like to give to the European Union, Murat, as Turkey? And of course, you're the most affected nation at the moment, and I believe EU is not cooperating enough. So what in your perspective is your message to the European Union? What immediate steps should be taken to combat the situation and improve the odds for all involved, for that matter?
I mean, first of all, I think that building fences and walls is not a solution. History has shown us that at the end walls fell and fences are destroyed. So it's not the way to cope with this huge humanitarian crisis. What the EU should do, in my view, is they have to, we said that we have to look forward to the future, but sometimes also we have to take lessons from the past. So they have to come back to the founding principles of the EU, which was, as you know, created after World War II to bring peace to the continent. And at that time it was a very generous and open-minded organization. And not just dealing with simple economic interests. So I think the EU should return to its founding principles.
So what makes you think brought this change, in the EU? What brought this change in the EU thought process? Was it the radicalization? Was it the leftists or the rightists or the extremist parties? Who is actually responsible for creating such a mess that now everybody else has to clear up for the EU, for that matter?
It's difficult to answer, but I think that people lost their belief in a united European states idea. Like in the 80s, people came to Turkey in my school, and they were young people believing in the European Federation and fighting for it and dispersing those ideas. Today, those are lost. Those ideals are lost, and people are just looking to their paychecks or their incentives. The ideals should come back. I think that's the main challenge today.
So what do you think, what can possibly bring back those foundation principles back to the, back to where it began? Because I know that there was a vision of a joint European Union, which would again become another superpower. Like you have the United States, you had the USSR back then. And then you have the EU, which came together in the 80s after, especially rose after the downfall of Russia. And now it's, it sort of feels like they are an unnatural union. What makes it that way?
I think that too much emphasis was given on economic matters and not enough on other matters like the suppression of the democratic deficit in Europe. As you know, the European Parliament is, although democratically elected, has not as much importance as the national parliaments. But for example, if you look to the central banks, they have set up a central bank for the EU. So all the emphasis was given to economics.
Viewers, we would like to thank our honorable guest, Mr. Murat Mustafa Onart, the Consul General of Turkey in Karachi, for sharing his precious views and spending his worthy time with us. And we hope that our brothers and sisters in Syria return home to a peaceful country and can carry on their lives at their comfort. Until the next time, it's goodbye.